Imagine a global icon, a man whose face has been etched into the collective consciousness of cinema for nearly half a century, stepping onto the most prestigious red carpet in the world and leaving an entire crowd in a state of absolute disbelief. For decades, John Travolta has been the gold standard of Hollywood charisma. We know the swagger of Danny Zuko, the lethal intensity of Vincent Vega, and the effortless, sun-drenched cool of a leading man who seemed to glide through every scene. But on May 15, 2026, at the Cannes Film Festival in France, the world didn't just see a movie star. They saw a transformation. They saw a man who was no longer interested in playing the part of a legend, but was instead interested in showing the world who he actually is. The headlines immediately exploded with a single word: shock. Fans, critics, and fashion historians alike were doing a double-take as Travolta emerged from his vehicle, not in the expected, safe confines of a traditional tuxedo, but in a look that felt like a daring, intellectual departure from his established persona. Rocking a cream-colored wool beret, a carefully curated beard, and a style that leaned more toward a European artist than a Hollywood heartthrob, the 72-year-old actor sent a clear, resonant signal to the global audience. This wasn't merely a fashion choice or a whim of the moment. This was a calculated statement of intent. The new look was a visual marker for a new chapter in his existence, a transition from the man who performs the vision of others to the man who finally commands his own. It was as if he were shedding the skin of the celebrity and stepping into the skin of the creator. Beside him was the anchor for this new journey, his 26-year-old daughter, Bleu Travolta. Their presence together on the carpet was more than just a touching father-daughter moment. It was a professional partnership of the highest order. Ella wasn't just there to support her father's bravery. She was a vital component of the project that had brought them to the French Riviera. They were there for the world premiere of Propeller One-Way Night Coach, John Travolta's directorial debut. For anyone who has followed the trajectory of Travolta's career, this moment felt like a profound culmination. After decades of being the face of the billion-dollar blockbuster, he had finally stepped behind the lens, taking a massive creative gamble on a project that was light years away from the high-octane action movies that had defined his later years. He was no longer the tool of the director. He was the architect of the vision. But as the flashing bulbs of the paparazzi faded and the guests moved from the chaos of the carpet into the sanctuary of the theater, the evening shifted from a fashion event to a deep, emotional experience. Inside the hushed, expectant atmosphere of the cinema, Travolta was met with a surprise that no amount of fame or experience could have prepared him for. He was presented with the Honorary Palme d'Or. For those who view the Oscars as the ultimate gold standard of achievement, the Palme d'Or may seem like a secondary prize, but in the world of high cinema, it is a different beast entirely. It is not just an award, it is a declaration of artistic legitimacy. It is the Cannes equivalent of a lifetime achievement honor, and as the prestigious trophy was handed to him by festival head Thierry Fremaux, the facade of the Hollywood superstar completely vanished. The world watched as Travolta became visibly shaken. The composure of a man who has faced the world's most demanding audiences for 50 years dissolved in an instant. His eyes glistened with tears as he gazed at the award, and in a voice trembling with raw, unfiltered emotion, he told the audience that this was the last thing he expected. He admitted that while he had been told the night would be special, he never imagined it would mean this. Then he uttered a phrase that would spark 1,000 debates across social media and in the halls of cinema. This is beyond the Oscar, really. To understand why a man with 2 Academy Award nominations would claim a festival prize is beyond the Oscar, we have to analyze the nature of the achievement. An Oscar often celebrates a specific performance, a role played with precision in a specific year. It is a prize for a job well done, but the Honorary Palme d'Or recognizes the soul of an artist. It is a validation of a lifetime of contribution to the medium of film, a recognition that the artist has moved beyond mere performance and into the realm of influence. By receiving this honor on the very night he premiered his first film as a director, Travolta wasn't being celebrated for who he had been, the dancer, the hitman, the star, but for who he had become, a storyteller. The film itself, Propeller One-Way Night Coach, is the key to this entire emotional puzzle. It is not a typical Hollywood feature. It is an hour-long, autobiographical family adventure based on a children's book Travolta wrote back in 1997. The story follows an 8-year-old boy named Jett, a young aviation enthusiast who embarks on a cross-country flight to Hollywood with his mother. On the surface, it is a nostalgic trip to the golden age of flight, filled with the wide-eyed wonder of a child discovering the world from 30,000 feet. It is a love letter to the era of propeller planes and the romance of early travel. But beneath the surface, the film is a vessel for a much deeper, more painful and more beautiful history. The actor revealed a truth that changed the entire context of the premiere. He wrote the original book for his late son, Jett, who tragically passed away in 2009. For those who know the history of the Travolta family, this adds a layer of heartbreaking significance to the project. Propeller One-Way Night Coach isn't just a movie about planes. It is a cinematic memorial. It is a way for a father to process a grief that never truly leaves, translating that pain into a story about a child's dreams. When Travolta spoke after the screening, he didn't talk about box office projections or critical acclaim. He spoke about the blueprint of his life. He looked at the audience and pointed to the people sitting there, his family, his collaborators, and stated that they are the reason he exists as an artist. The film's characters are not mere fictions. They are ghosts and guardians from his own past. He explained that the lead character in the film was inspired by his oldest sister, Ellen, and his mother, stating that they were the ones responsible for all his hopes and dreams. By directing this film, Travolta wasn't just making a movie. He was conducting a séance of his own origins. He was taking the world back to the moment he first discovered his passion, stripping away the layers of celebrity to show us the little boy who just wanted to fly. He was proving that the most personal stories are often the ones that resonate most universally. This obsession with aviation is not just a plot point in his movie. It is the defining characteristic of the man himself. John Travolta is not just a movie star who likes planes. He is a licensed pilot whose relationship with aircraft is legendary. In a move that perfectly captured the spirit of his new project, Travolta didn't fly to France on a corporate jet operated by a professional crew. He flew himself. Hours before the premiere, he shared a video on Instagram, boarding his plane with Ella by his side. There was something profoundly poetic about that flight. As he spoke into the intercom, mimicking the role of a captain, he told his passengers, in this case his daughter, that the flying time was 92 hours and that the champagne was on him. In that moment, the distinction between the actor and the man disappeared. He wasn't playing a part. He was living his truth. The act of piloting himself to the world's most prestigious film festival was the ultimate metaphor for his current state of mind. He was finally the one in the cockpit, navigating his own destiny, steering his life toward a destination of his own choosing, far away from the expectations of a studio or a producer. The shock of his new look, the beret, the beard, the unconventional style, now takes on a completely different meaning. It wasn't an attempt to trend or a bid for attention. It was the visual representation of a man who has stopped trying to fit the mold of what a movie star should look like at 72. It was the look of a man who is finally comfortable in his own skin, regardless of whether it fits the rigid expectations of the red carpet. He has realized that at this stage of his life, authenticity is more valuable than approval. As we reflect on this moment at Cannes, we see a larger story unfolding. We see the transition of a legend. For decades, we have known John Travolta as the man who could dance, the man who could fight, and the man who could command a screen with a single look. But at the 79th Annual Cannes Film Festival, he showed us a different kind of strength. He showed us the strength it takes to be vulnerable. He showed us the courage it takes to make a peculiar film about a child's dream in an era of cynical, formulaic blockbusters. The Honorary Palme d'Or may be a trophy of gold, but for Travolta, the real prize was the ability to stand before the world and say that his family and his memories are the true source of his art. He proved that it is never too late to start over, to debut a new version of yourself, or to finally tell the story that has been living in your heart for 30 years. He transformed the narrative of his life from one of professional success to one of personal fulfillment. John Travolta arrived in France as a global icon, a man known for his hits, his fame, and his image. But he left as something far more enduring. He left as a director, a father, and a survivor. He reminded us that while the Oscars may recognize a performance, the heart recognizes a legacy. By embracing his origins, honoring his lost son, and celebrating the women who shaped him, he turned a red carpet event into a masterclass in human emotion. In the end, the shock of his new look was the least interesting thing about the evening. The real shock was the depth of his humility and the purity of his passion. The man who once conquered the world with a dance move had finally found a way to conquer his own history. He stopped chasing the applause of strangers and started listening to the voice of his own experience. And as his plane climbed back into the sky, leaving the French Riviera behind, John Travolta wasn't just flying back to America. He was soaring into a new era of his life. He has stepped out of the shadow of his own fame and into the light of his own truth. The only direction left for him now is up, not as a star being watched, but as a captain navigating his own soul. He has taught us that the most daring act a person can perform is to stop pretending and start being.